Good morning, everybody. Boy, it's a nice, wonderful, cool morning out here. Beautiful. Except the only thing is, yesterday at this time it was 66 degrees, going up to 80, or just about 80. Now it's only about 46. And tomorrow at this time, I could be standing in a little dusting of snow. Wait a minute, what's going on here? This is the end of April. It's that time of year things get a little goofy and crazy. And that's the way life is too. It's a little goofy and crazy. Look at these guys right here. Yeah, they're out here enjoying this weather. They like it when it's cool. I'm not so sure they like it so much when it's all muddy. Look at the big mud hole they get to play in back here. Well, yeah, there's no ducks swimming around in there yet because I still have a lot of them put away for the night. But talking about goofy and crazy stuff, what about you being a first century Jesus follower and you get a dream, a vision from God that says, hey there, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go down on State Street there. No, not State Street. Straight Street. Yeah, Straight Street. You know, the one that doesn't have any bends in it. And I want you to go to, there's this guy named Judas down there. Go to his house. He's a nice guy. But I want you also, he has somebody there with him right now. His name's Saul. I want you to pray for him. And all of a sudden you go, hold the phone. God, I love you. And you know I'm your faithful servant. But I know this Saul guy. And, you know, he's a bad dude. He goes around beating up on Jesus freaks. And I love your son, Jesus. But come on now. If that makes me a Jesus freak, you know what that means? This might be a trap. He probably is out for me. God says, just do it, dude, would you? And so he obeys, and he goes, and he prays for Saul. And, well, that's the rest of the story. But before we get there, this is Testy Tuesday. What's the name of the guy who had the vision to pray for Saul? I'll give you a couple choices here. I'll give you 4 choices, in fact. You pick the right one. Was his name Ananias? Was he Josephus? Was he Cornelius? Or was he Matthias? All right, have all those? All right, Ananias, Josephus, Cornelius, or Matthias? The correct answer is Ananias. Yep, it was Ananias, and he was called to pray for Saul. You might recall that part of our lesson for this coming Sunday is the 9th chapter of Acts, the first about 20 verses of it. And it's talking about what's often called the conversion of Saul. And that's not quite right, and I'll get to that in a minute. But you know the gist of the story. He's blinded by a bright light, and he has a conversation with Jesus himself. And through that conversation, he's told to go and wait, and I'll send someone to you and pray for you, and you will be healed, and you're going to become my servant. Because up till now, he was not Jesus' servant. He felt he was a servant of God, of Yahweh, but hey, that is the rest of this story. We see that he's healed, and from this point on, as we move into the book of Acts, it's really going to become the story of Paul. Now, we still have a few more things to go on with some of the other disciples, but it becomes the story of Paul. Saul. Paul. Saul? What is his name anyhow? Well, this is a misconception. A lot of people think that on that road to Damascus, when he has this blinding light and the voice from Jesus himself, this is where a lot of people think his name gets changed to Paul. And that's not true. In fact, it's just kind of incidentally that his name is changed in the book of Acts to Paul. There's I'm not exactly sure. I don't have my Bible with me out here, but it's around chapter 13, 14, somewhere in there, where it's talking about Paul having been commissioned to go out by the church in Jerusalem to go, or maybe it was Antioch at that point. Anyhow, they go out and spread the gospel to the Gentiles. And it just says Saul, who was also known as Paul. Yeah, as quick as that, his name gets changed. And from that point on, he's just mentioned and referred to as Paul. Why is that? We don't have the slightest idea. The Bible never tells us why. It just says, hey, he was also known as Paul, and from that point on, he's called Paul. So don't think it was because of his conversion. No, really, it's the difference is in Greek, Saul would be, his Greek name would be Paul, although it had a different kind of meaning for it. Like in the Hebrew, Saul, it means one who is to be desired. You know, you really like this guy, you want to be his friend. And in the Greek version, which is Paul, it means little. Little? Did Paul choose that name for himself? He did say he was the least of the apostles. So maybe, who knows? We don't know. But there it is, anyhow. But the whole story itself, don't think of it so much as Paul's conversion, because he was a Yahweh believer. He believed in God. He believed in, let's put it this way, he was the best Jew you could ever find in your life. The most faithful and pure, trying to preserve the purity of the faith. So it wasn't so much a conversion to another faith. That's what we often think of conversions. You're changing your faith altogether. No, now it's his eyes have been opened. Oh yeah, that's what happens when he gets prayed over. The scales fall out of his eyes, and he sees Jesus for who he is, not just some crazy, goofy prophet that a lot of people started following and messing up our Jewish faith. That's what Paul thought. He was just trying to hold the faith accountable and make the faith pure and get rid of those people who are destroying our heritage and our love for God. Well, no. Now he has his eyes open. Paul, you've been missing it. You've been missing the point. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. In fact, the followers were called at that point. The followers of Jesus were being called followers of the way. Isn't it kind of interesting that it was on the way to Damascus that the scripture says this whole incident happens? I think that's kind of cool. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but there it is. There it is. So think of it in that way, okay? Not so much a conversion, but your eyes are open to a deeper reality, especially in regards to our faith. Because face it, we, as God's followers today, as Christians, as Jesus freaks, as Jesus followers, okay, we too can get a little messed up and think we're out there preserving the faith and keeping it pure. We can fall into the same pits and traps that Saul did. Saul, who now has become Paul along the way, but he never stopped believing in God. It's just now he starts believing in Jesus as the Son of God, as God himself. Okay, so it's a purification of his own faith, so that he now is one who goes out and starts sharing love instead of fear. Love instead of fear. And we see where that eventually gets him. Yeah, he loses his head over the whole deal, let's put it that way. Hey, he was a martyr for the faith. But Saul, who becomes Paul, Ananias, who, despite his misgivings, prays for him, and it's all because of that, because of Ananias's obedience and his love of Jesus, that we have such a great person of faith as Paul that we can look to and read about and read from to help us along in our journey of faith. Well, it's going to be quite a journey the next 2 days as this weather cools off and we're back to almost winter-like conditions for a day or two. But do not fear, May is near. God's blessings be with you.